So now we're going to be doing our abdominal muscles. We have 4 abdominal muscles. One is in the middle, that is the rectus abdominis, and the other 3 are going to be on the side. So we're going to have a right and left rectus abdominis, and our lateral muscles, we're going to have right and left of those also. So I want you to understand how they are arranged. We said we had our lateral muscles and our middle muscle. Let's start with the most superficial. So if this line is representing your skin, the first most superficial muscle is going to be called your external oblique. Right and left external oblique. The external obliques, it's telling you I'm external, I'm on the outside, my muscle fibers are arranged in an oblique fashion. And here you can actually see the muscle fiber arrangement of his external obliques. The muscle fibers are going downwards. So that is the external oblique. Just deep to the external oblique is going to be the internal oblique. It's not as big as the external, and its muscle fibers are also in oblique fashion, but they're going in the opposite direction. External oblique, they're going down. When you see the internal oblique, their muscle fibers are going up. So they're still oblique, but in the opposite direction as the external oblique. The deepest muscle on these lateral muscle pairs is going to be the transversus abdominis. Now, transversus abdominis, the muscle fibers are in the transverse. They're going straight across. Once you cut through the transversus abdominis, you are in the abdominal cavity. Now, and then here is our rectus. The rectus abdominis right smack in the middle. What you also need to be able to see, and you will see it on I'll be showing you a dissection video of the abdomen. You will be seeing this tendon, where these muscle fibers are going to be inserting into is going to be this broad flattened-like tendon. Remember, we called it the aponeurosis. So all these aponeurosi are going to come together and form this aponeurosis. And in the middle where they're joining, they're going to form something called the linea alba, the white line. And you can kind of see his linea alba right down here. That is just the aponeurosis, the tendon right there. What you will also see is this aponeurosis, when it comes together, when it gets to the rectus abdominis, it's going to wrap around the front of the rectus abdominis and wrap around the back side of the rectus abdominis, and it's going to form something called the rectus sheath. Now you will see this on the dissection, but the rectus sheath is basically holding in that rectus abdominis muscle right here. So on a chart or a model, this is how they're going to be showing you these structures. This side of the chart that we have in our classroom, this is the most superficial. And then here we're going to the deeper layers on this side. The most superficial, obviously, the external oblique. You can see the muscle fibers coming downward in this direction. They are inserting in this white, broad, flattened tendon called the aponeurosis. Here is the linea alba right down the center. On this side, they have removed the external oblique. So what you are now seeing is the internal oblique. Its muscle fibers are going up, also inserting into that aponeurosis. And here is the bottom part of the internal oblique. They've cut like a little window down here to get to the deeper muscles. So this is all internal oblique. You look at muscle fibers to determine where you are. Here is the rectus abdominis. Remember, rectus means straight, so these muscle fibers are going up and down. This is the deepest layer here, the transversus abdominis. The muscle fibers are in a transverse position. And if we go over to this guy, here we're seeing the external oblique again. Let's see if I can bring this a little bit closer. Here is the external oblique. And look how far up this external oblique, where it starts way up here. So that's going to kind of be important later on. External oblique. Muscle fibers going in a downward direction. Here is the aponeurosis. They're calling this part of the rectus sheath. This is the top part of the rectus sheath, and that is covering the rectus abdominis. And the rectus abdominis is going to have these little tendinous bands in between these straight muscle fibers, and that is how you're going to be getting your six-pack. If you exercise these muscles, they're going to hypertrophy, meaning they're getting bigger, but the tendon bands aren't going to get bigger, so you're going to get these little pouches of hypertrophied muscle fibers. And then on this side, they're showing you the internal oblique. The muscle fibers are going in an upward direction. So this diagram is showing you how you would see the abdominal muscles in any textbook diagram. So when you're looking at the muscles, always look at the direction of the muscle fibers. This is showing you the external oblique, and look how far up it starts. Its origin way up here. These muscles up here, these guys right here, these are going to be the serratus anterior, which you're going to be seeing shortly. These muscles, they look like they're going right into the external oblique right here. They're not, but they look like it. So these are going to be the serratus anterior. Here is the external oblique. It's huge. Here's the internal oblique, the aponeurosis, the linea alba, the rectus abdominis. Can't see the transversus here, so I brought this one in for you to see the transversus. It's the deepest muscle, and its muscle fibers are in a transverse direction, also inserting into that aponeurosis. Behind the transversus is going to be the abdominal cavity. So we are going to be saying these abdominal muscles are going to be moving the vertebral column. So when you contract your abdominal muscles, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we're contracting our external oblique, internal obliques, and our rectus abdominis to give you this forward motion. If you are doing sit-ups, you are contracting those abdominal muscles, you are doing a forward motion. You are moving the vertebral column. So we say the abdominal muscles, external obliques, internal obliques, and rectus abdominis are going to give us vertebral column flexion when they're all contracting. There is this group of muscles that you hopefully have seen in your worksheet called the erector spinae group. These muscles are on the back. They are actually within the vertebral column. So these erector spinae group muscles, they are deep, deep back muscles. They are moving the vertebral column. They are called erector because they are keeping the spine erect, keeping you upright, and they give you that extension also. When they contract, erector spinae group, it's a group of 3 muscles. So when you look at this, if we have the abdominal muscles anterior, the erector spinae group posterior, they're on opposite sides of the body. They have opposite actions on the vertebral column. These muscles are antagonists to each other. Opposite actions, opposite sides of the body. Now, the abdominal muscles, external obliques, internal obliques, rectus abdominis, those are all synergists. They are all working together to give you flexion of the vertebral column. The erector spinae group, these 3 muscles are all synergist to each other to give you extension of the vertebral column. The other actions that 2 of your abdominal muscles can give you is left and right lateral flexion. So lateral flexion, just kind of doing these side bends, bend to each side. That is from the external and internal obliques. And that'll make more sense when you look at these muscles a little bit closer. And they're also going to be giving you this rotation of the vertebral column that you can do. Remember, the rectus abdominis muscle, its origin is way up here, and its insertion is down in the pubic crest down here. So that the rectus abdominis muscle is going up and down. It's not giving you this rotational movement. And the transversus abdominis, we'll talk about that shortly. The transversus I'll talk about it now. The transversus abdominis really is not giving you any real movement on the vertebral column. Its main job is to help hold in, compress the abdominal cavity, to hold in all those abdominal organs and give support to that abdominal cavity. So all 4 abdominal muscles are going to act to compress the abdominal wall, give support to those abdominal organs. And all 4 will help with forced expiration. When you blow out, when you are blowing out your birthday candles, when you're doing that kind of motion, you can feel your abs contracting. They're helping to blow out, get rid of air. That is called forced expiration. Now I'm going to show you a dissection video so you can see these muscles when they're being dissected, and hopefully will help bring them so it'll be easier to visualize them. In the classroom, we do this with our cadavers. Once you see these muscles in a cadaver, you never forget them. They're easy to see. Those muscle fibers are so easy to see. That aponeurosis, once you feel it, you'll never forget what it feels like. So this is a dissection video of the abdominal muscles from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine. So thank you so much for posting this on YouTube. And let's have a look so you can see these muscles.
The next step is to reflect the external and internal and transversus abdominis muscles. And the best way to do that is to initially start by finding the upper margin of the external oblique, which is right here. The fibers are oriented in this direction, coming towards the midline, and we're going to cut these fibers as we see them end in their tendons right here, from about here down to the level of the umbilicus. So I've inserted a pair of scissors on the undersurface of this muscle so that it will guide my cut as I come down. Now I've just completed the incision of the external oblique all the way down to about the level of the umbilicus. We don't want you to go any further than that because we have an important area down in here, the inguinal area, that we'll be studying later on. I have separated the external oblique from the internal oblique by doing a blunt dissection. There's some fine connective tissue, and it's very easy to separate the two once you've found the plane. Furthermore, I have identified the internal oblique by the direction of its fibers. Don't forget that the external oblique fibers came down in this direction. The fibers of the internal oblique are at right angles to that, so that they are coming in this direction. Likewise, I've also cut along this margin of the internal oblique. It's a very thin muscle, so don't cut very deep. And once again, I've done a blunt dissection beneath the internal oblique so that I can reflect it and expose the underlying transversus abdominis muscle. Now, in the fine connective tissue between the second and the third layer, we find these nerves running here. These are intercostal nerves which have continued down onto the abdomen, and these are the nerves that are innervating these muscles. So you will see these appearing in a regular fashion, and so far I've uncovered two of them here, and we would expect to find another one down here. So those are the three layers of the abdomen that you should carefully reflect in this manner: external oblique, internal oblique, and finally the transversus. Okay. Now, to complete the dissection, we're going to look at the rectus abdominis muscle, and it is found within a compartment which is made up of something called the rectus sheath, and a portion of the rectus sheath is made up of this thin connective tissue. It's really a tendon, and it's really contributed to by each of the muscles that we dissected just a minute ago. That is to say, as the external and the internal and the transversus abdominal muscles come towards the midline, the fibers stop, and their tendon is really a very thin, flat tendon. Well, that tendon, as they join together at the lateral margin of the rectus muscle, now splits to form a little pocket in which the rectus muscle lives. So we are now cutting the anterior margin of that rectus sheath, and we've done that down the midline of the rectus muscles on the one side. So this is the midline here. There's a rectus muscle over here, and then there will be another rectus muscle on the other side within its own rectus sheath. So that there's an anterior lamina, or portion of the sheet, and then when we look behind the muscle, you see there's a posterior lamina. So this muscle really lives within an envelope within this connective tissue. So we've cut it along its external surface, and we have reflected it away from the rectus muscle. Now, the rectus muscle is really composed of several muscles which have come together secondarily. They're really separate muscles, and that's what gives rise to these tendinous inscriptions that you can see here. And in fact, these tendinous inscriptions are what we recognize as the so-called six-pack, because if this muscle were to hypertrophy, it gets large here and here and here.
That was a great video. I just love that. I wish you guys were in the classroom. You could see this on our cadaver, but hopefully that will help you visualize it a little bit better. I'm going to do one final recap, and then hopefully you will never forget your abdominal muscles. So this is our final recap of your abdominal muscles. Remember, this is your aponeurosis, flattened connective tissue, flattened tendon, aponeurosis. This is the linea alba, where they connect in the middle. This is the external oblique. I just wanted to show you how large it was and where it does go. Look at where it goes. It's all the way around here. This is why you're getting lateral flexion and rotation around the vertebral column. So you can see it better there. Huge, huge. The other thing I wanted to point out with this external oblique, these muscles up in here that you're going to be seeing shortly, these are the serratus anterior muscles, so you're going to see them. And here is the external oblique, the serratus anterior. So when we get to these muscles here, the serratus anterior, it'll be easier for you to visualize. So that is your external oblique. Now, deep to external oblique, let me get rid of external oblique, is going to be internal oblique. So here is the internal oblique. Still kind of wraps around on the lateral side, goes into that aponeurosis. This is internal oblique. The muscle fibers are going upward. He's not quite as big as the external oblique. That's the internal oblique. Now if we hide him, then we are getting into the transversus abdominis, the deepest muscle. Transversus, this is him. Here's the muscle fibers going in this direction. And here you can actually see transversus is the deepest. He's inserting into the back side of the rectus abdominis. And then obviously your midline muscle is your rectus abdominis. So that's it for the abdominal muscles. Hopefully this helps you and you will never forget these 4 muscles.